The night was quiet around the small lake near the old cabin where Keanu Reeves had come to find peace. The place was simple and silent. A wooden porch, a few lamps inside, tall trees standing like calm guards. The sky was dark and soft, and the air felt heavy. It was the kind of night where a person could hear their own thoughts too clearly, and Keanu had many thoughts that he did not want to hear at all. He sat on an old chair near the water. His hands were still, his face was calm, but inside he carried a weight that he had never spoken about to anyone. This weight had been growing for weeks. He wanted to escape it, but it followed him everywhere. It followed him when he walked. It followed him when he slept. It followed him even when he smiled in front of others. And now, in the stillness of this lonely night, the weight felt deeper than ever. Keanu took a slow breath as if trying to steady his mind. He had always been a person who stayed strong in front of others. People looked at him with respect and saw someone who was calm and steady. But there was something he had not told anyone, something that made him question his own worth. He felt that he had let someone down. He felt he had failed in a moment that mattered. And even though no one blamed him, he blamed himself. This was the reason he had come here, this quiet cabin, this lake, this silence. He wanted answers, but the silence only brought more questions. He closed his eyes and tried to understand why this pain inside him would not go away. As he listened to the sound of water touching the shore, he wondered if he had changed. He wondered if he was losing the person he used to be. He wondered if he could even continue being the man he believed he was. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly lost. He did not hear the sound of a car approaching. He did not notice the soft footsteps on the wooden ground. He did not expect anyone to be here. He had come to be alone. But sometimes, life does not allow a person to stay lost by themselves. Sandra Bullock stood quietly at the edge of the porch, watching Keanu from a distance. She had known him for years. She could read him better than most people. When he went silent for too long, she felt it. When something bothered him, she sensed it. And when he withdrew from everyone, she knew something serious was happening. Sandra had spent 2 hours deciding whether she should come here or not. She did not want to disturb him. She did not want to step into his private world without permission. But she also knew that Keanu would not reach out on his own. He would stay silent. He would hide his pain. He would carry everything alone, and she could not let him do that, not this time. She took one slow step forward. The wooden board under her foot made a faint sound. Keanu opened his eyes and looked back. The moment he saw her, his expression changed. He was surprised, not annoyed. But in his eyes, there was also something else, a softness mixed with sorrow. "Sandra, what are you doing here?" he asked in a quiet voice. His tone was not sharp, it was tired, and that tiredness told her more than his words ever could. Sandra walked closer and sat on the porch a few steps away from him. She did not force eye contact. She did not try to fill the silence. She simply stayed beside him. "I was worried about you," she replied gently. Keanu turned his eyes back to the lake. He took a slow breath. He did not deny it. He did not pretend he was fine. He did not put on a smile. He simply sat with the truth that he had been trying so hard to hide. They stayed like that for a long moment. No noise, no movement, only the soft sound of water and the distant call of night birds. Sandra waited for him to speak, but she did not push him. She understood that heavy emotions do not open easily. Finally, Keanu spoke. "I feel like I failed," he said quietly. Sandra looked at him with full attention. "Failed who?" she asked. Keanu paused before answering. "Myself," he said. There was something fragile in his voice, something she had never heard from him before, something that told her how deeply this pain had grown inside him. "I tried to fix something that went wrong," he continued. "I tried so hard, but no matter how much I tried, I could not change the result. I thought I could make a difference. I thought I could help, but I made things worse. And since then, I have been asking myself if I am even the person people believe I am." Sandra listened without interrupting. She had known Keanu long enough to understand that he was not talking about fame or public expectations. He was talking about his own standards. He was talking about the kind of man he wanted to be. He was talking about a moment where he felt he fell short in a way that shook his spirit. "It feels like I lost something inside me," he whispered. Sandra felt her heart twist at those words. She had seen Keanu be strong. She had seen him be kind. She had seen him lift others without ever asking for anything in return. To hear him speak like this felt almost unreal, but it also showed how human he truly was. She moved a little closer, not too close, just close enough so he could feel that she was there. Keanu, she said softly, you have carried this alone for too long. Keanu closed his eyes. The silence around them felt warm now, not painful, not heavy. Sandra's presence had changed it. She whispered, you are not alone. He opened his eyes again and looked at her. There was a deep emotion in his eyes, not tears, not fear, but something quieter, something that came from being understood without judgment. Sandra continued, you think you failed because you care deeply. You think you lost yourself because you expect so much from your own heart. But the fact that you feel this way shows the kind of person you truly are. Keanu did not speak, but his expression changed slightly. He was listening with his full heart. Sandra added, you are allowed to fall. Even the strongest people fall. But what matters is that you get back up. And you will, not because the world expects it, but because it is who you are. The words settled in the air between them. Gentle, warm, steady. Keanu took a breath that felt deeper than any breath he had taken in weeks. For the first time, the weight in his chest felt like it was shifting. Not gone, but moving, loosening. He whispered, thank you for coming. Sandra smiled a little. I could not let you stay lost in your thoughts forever. Keanu looked out at the lake again. The night felt different now. Lighter, safer. The presence of someone who cared had changed everything. He did not know what the next day would bring. He did not know how long it would take to heal. But he knew one thing with certainty. He was not alone anymore. And that single truth was the first step toward finding himself again. The morning light reached the cabin before Keanu opened his eyes. The soft glow filled the small room and touched every corner with a calm, gentle warmth. Outside, the lake reflected the early sun like a sheet of quiet gold. Birds moved across the sky, and the wind carried a peaceful sound through the tall trees. But inside Keanu's mind, peace was still far away. He had slept only in short bursts. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the same weight pulling him back into the thoughts he was trying to escape. The memories he wanted to forget kept coming back, asking for answers he did not have. He sat up slowly and rubbed his face, trying to steady his breath. He looked around the room and remembered something important. Sandra was still here. She had stayed the night in the guest room. She had not forced him to talk. She had not asked too many questions. She had simply stayed because she understood that silence sometimes gives comfort that words cannot. Keanu stood and walked toward the small kitchen area. He boiled water and prepared 2 cups of tea, even though Sandra might still be asleep. It felt natural. It felt right. The simple act helped calm his breathing for a moment. As he placed the cups on the table, he heard a quiet sound behind him. Sandra stepped out of the hallway, her hair slightly messy from sleep, her face soft but alert. She looked at the 2 cups and smiled. You made tea, she said. Yeah, he replied softly. She sat at the table. Keanu joined her. Neither of them spoke for a few seconds. It was not uncomfortable. It was simply honest. Sandra watched him carefully, noticing the tiredness under his eyes. You did not sleep much, she said. Keanu looked down at the cup. I tried, he replied, but my mind kept going back to the same place. Sandra leaned slightly forward, showing she was ready to listen whenever he chose to speak. She did not push. She let him choose the moment. Keanu took a slow breath. There is something I did not tell you last night, he said. Sandra held her cup but did not raise it to her lips. She knew the next words mattered. Go on, she said gently. Keanu looked toward the window. The trees outside stood tall, steady, grounded. He wished he felt that way, but he did not. The thing that went wrong, he began. It happened because I trusted the wrong person. Sandra's eyes softened. She understood how deeply that could hurt. Keanu continued. I wanted to help someone. I believed they needed support. I believed they were honest. I believed I could make a difference in their life. But it turned out they were not who they said they were. They used my help to do something that caused harm to others, and when everything came out, I felt responsible for giving them that chance. Sandra listened closely, her heart tightening at his words. She could feel the pain behind them. She could see how much he had carried alone. It was not your fault, she said softly. Keanu shook his head. But I was the one who trusted them. I did not see the signs. I did not question enough. I believed too quickly. Someone got hurt because of that. Maybe not directly because of me, but I was connected to it. I cannot stop thinking about it. Sandra set her cup down and looked at him with calm seriousness. Keanu, you trusted someone because you have a good heart. You trusted because you believe in people. That is not a weakness. That is strength. What they did was their choice, not yours. Keanu did not respond right away. The room filled with silence again, but this time it felt heavier. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to accept those words. But guilt held him like a shadow that refused to move. He whispered, "I keep thinking I should have seen it coming." Sandra replied, "No one sees everything. Even the kindest people can be hurt by those they try to help." Keanu finally lifted his eyes to meet hers. "But I feel like I let someone down, someone who trusted me to make the right choice." Sandra understood now. This was not just a mistake. This was a wound formed from a place of responsibility, care, and self-expectation. She reached her hand toward him slowly. She did not take his hand. She simply placed her hand on the table near his, giving him the space to decide. After a moment, Keanu placed his hand over hers. It was not a dramatic gesture. It was quiet and full of meaning. A moment of grounding, a moment of shared strength. Sandra spoke in a warm, steady tone. "You are judging yourself with a level of kindness you do not even expect from others. You forgive people. You support them. You stand by them. But when it comes to yourself, you are the harshest person in your own life." Keanu felt those words in his chest. They were true, painfully true. Sandra continued, "You are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to trust. You are allowed to believe in people. Those things do not make you weak. They make you human. They make you good." Keanu looked down again, feeling emotion he had tried to bury for weeks. He blinked slowly, not because he was holding back tears, but because he was trying to process the truth she was giving him. Sandra squeezed his hand gently. "You did not lose yourself, Keanu. You just got hurt. And when we get hurt, our mind tells us lies about who we are. But I am here to tell you the truth. You are still the same person who cares. You are still the person who helps. You are still the person who brings light to others." Keanu's voice came out quiet, "But I do not feel like that person anymore." Sandra answered, "That is why I came, to remind you. Not by talking about the past, but by standing beside you until you feel like yourself again." Keanu looked at her with a depth she had seen only a few times in her life. It was gratitude, respect, and something even deeper, trust. He whispered, "I do not know where to start." Sandra smiled in a soft, steady way. "We start right here, with today, with this moment." Keanu took another breath. The air felt warmer now, lighter, as if a door inside him had opened a little. Sandra leaned back in her chair and sipped her tea. She wanted him to feel comfortable. She wanted him to breathe freely. "Why did you come, really?" Keanu asked suddenly. His voice was gentle but curious. Sandra looked at him with full honesty. "Because you have carried the world for others so many times. When it was your turn to carry something heavy, I could not let you do it alone." Keanu felt something shift inside him, something subtle but powerful. For the first time since everything went wrong, he did not feel lost. He still felt pain, he still felt fear, but he did not feel alone. And that small difference was starting to change everything. Outside, the sun rose higher, brightening the lake, warming the cabin, and filling the morning with quiet hope. In that moment, Keanu understood something he had forgotten. He did not need answers yet. He only needed support. And Sandra had given him exactly that. The afternoon sun rested gently over the lake. Light passed through the branches and created soft patterns on the wooden porch. Keanu and Sandra stepped outside after finishing their tea. The air was cool but pleasant, and the silence between them felt more peaceful than before. As they stood near the edge of the lake, Sandra noticed how Keanu kept rubbing his hands together. It was something he did only when he was trying to calm himself. She knew he was still struggling. Healing does not happen in one moment. Healing takes time and small steps. "You want to walk a little?" she asked. Keanu nodded. They began walking along the path beside the water, moving slowly, letting the natural beauty around them soften the tension in the air. The leaves moved softly. The lake glowed under the sunlight. It was the kind of place that held old memories and quiet truths. After a few minutes, Sandra glanced at him. "There is more you want to say, right?" Keanu stopped walking. He looked at the lake for a long moment before he spoke. "Yes, but I do not know how to talk about it." Sandra waited patiently. She knew he needed that space. Finally, Keanu let out a slow breath. "There is something deeper behind what happened, something I have not told anyone." Sandra stepped closer, but she did not pressure him. She simply stood beside him, ready to listen. Keanu lowered his eyes. The person I trusted reminded me of someone from my past, someone who hurt me a long time ago. Sandra listened with quiet attention. She could feel the weight returning in his voice. Keanu continued softly, "Years ago, I helped someone who needed support. I trusted them completely. I believed their words. I believed their promises. I believed I could make their world better. But in the end, they did the opposite. They lied. They used my support for something harmful, and when everything fell apart, they blamed me." He paused, as if his mind was fighting a memory he wished he could erase. "I forgave them, or at least I tried to," he said. "But I never forgot the feeling. I never forgot that moment when I realized someone had used my kindness against me." Sandra felt a deep sadness rise inside her. She had never heard him speak of this before. Keanu took another breath and continued. "So when this new situation happened, when this new person showed similar signs, I felt something old open again inside me. I did not see the danger because I was trying so hard to be better than my past. I thought if I trusted again, it would make me stronger. But instead, it reminded me of the pain I thought I had closed forever." Sandra placed her hand gently on his arm. "So this is not only about what happened now, it is also about what happened before." Keanu nodded slowly. "Yes, I feel like I failed twice, once in the past and now again. It is like a mirror showing me everything I have tried to forget." Sandra spoke in a soft, calm voice. "Sometimes life repeats lessons until we finally understand that the pain was never our fault." Keanu looked at her with tired eyes. "But why do I feel like I let myself down?" Sandra answered, "Because you care. Because you always carry responsibility even when it does not belong to you. Because you have a heart that wants to make people better, even when they do not want the same for you." Keanu turned his head slightly, listening to her words as if they held a piece of truth he had been searching for. Sandra continued, "You punish yourself because you expect perfection from your own kindness, but kindness is not perfect. Kindness is brave. Kindness is risky. Kindness sometimes hurts the one who gives it." Keanu walked forward a few steps, then stopped and faced her. "I try to stay strong. I try to stay calm. But when something like this happens, I feel like I break inside. I feel like I am losing my sense of who I am." Sandra stepped closer, her voice steady but warm. "You are not losing yourself. You are discovering new layers of yourself. Layers that come with pain, layers that come with fear, but also layers that come with growth. This is not the end of your identity. This is one step in the journey of becoming even stronger." Keanu listened quietly. The wind touched the surface of the lake, creating gentle ripples that spread outward. He watched those ripples for a moment. "You always know how to say the right thing," he said softly. Sandra shook her head with a small smile. "Not always. I just know what it feels like when a person believes they are not enough. I know how it feels to carry guilt that does not belong to you, and I know how it feels to need someone to tell you that you are still worthy." Keanu looked at her with deep gratitude. "I never wanted anyone to see this side of me, the side that is confused, the side that doubts, the side that does not feel strong." Sandra gave him a gentle look. "Everyone has that side, but most people hide it. You are brave enough to speak it." Keanu lowered his gaze again. "I do not feel brave." "That is because you think bravery means not feeling pain," she replied. "But true bravery is feeling pain and still choosing to stand." Keanu took a slow breath. The air felt different now, warmer, clearer. He could feel something shifting inside him, something he had not expected. After a long pause, he said, "There is one more thing I need to tell you." Sandra waited, sensing this was important. Keanu continued quietly, "I did not want to tell you the truth last night because I thought you would see me differently." Sandra spoke instantly, without hesitation. "I could never see you differently because of a moment of pain." "But what if I disappoint you?" he asked. She smiled softly. "You could never disappoint me by being human." Keanu felt that sentence settle deeply into his heart. It touched a place he had ignored for too long. She walked closer and stood beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "You do not have to be the strong one every moment of your life. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let someone help you heal." Keanu looked at her. The light reflected gently in his eyes, showing a mix of pain and relief. He whispered, "Thank you for understanding me." Sandra replied, "Thank you for trusting me." They began walking again, slowly, letting the quiet calm of nature settle around them. Every step felt lighter, every breath felt deeper. As they reached the tall tree near the end of the path, Sandra asked, "What do you want to do now?" Keanu thought for a moment. Then he said, "I do not want to run from myself anymore. I want to understand what I am feeling. I want to face it instead of hiding." Sandra nodded with pride in her eyes. "Then I am here with you every step." Keanu felt something he had not felt in weeks. Hope, not loud hope, quiet hope, slow hope, real hope. The kind of hope that begins the moment a person stops fighting alone. The kind of hope that grows when someone chooses to stay by your side. And for the first time since the pain began, Keanu believed he might actually find himself again. The sky slowly turned a soft shade of orange as the afternoon passed. The warm colors spread over the lake like gentle paint strokes, and the entire place felt calm. Keanu and Sandra walked back toward the cabin but did not go inside. Instead, they sat on the wooden steps facing the water. Neither spoke at first. They simply sat together, letting the quiet hold their thoughts. Keanu leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. Sandra could see that he was thinking deeply, almost fighting with something inside him. She waited again, giving him space to process what he felt. After a long moment, Keanu said quietly, "There is something else I need to tell you, something I have not even admitted to myself." Sandra turned her head toward him. Her expression stayed calm, patient, and open. "You can tell me anything," she said. Keanu took a slow breath. "I was not only hurt by what happened, I was afraid of something." "What were you afraid of?" Sandra asked gently. His eyes stayed on the lake as he spoke. "I was afraid that this mistake would change the way I see myself. I was afraid I was becoming someone I did not recognize, someone who does not help anymore, someone who does not believe anymore." Sandra listened with full attention. She could feel how much it cost him to say those words. Keanu continued, "I know it sounds strange, but when someone takes advantage of your kindness, it makes you question your own heart. It makes you wonder if you should stop caring, stop trusting, stop opening yourself to people." He paused and looked down at his hands. "I was afraid that this pain would change me forever." Sandra's voice was soft and warm. "Pain does change people, Keanu, but it does not have to take away the good in them." Keanu lifted his eyes slowly. "But what if I become colder without even noticing it? What if I stop being the person I want to be?" Sandra nodded gently. "That fear is exactly what proves you are still the same person, someone who cares about not losing himself." Keanu did not answer, but something in his face softened. It was as if her words reached the place he had been protecting for so long. Sandra continued in a sincere voice, "You are afraid of changing because you value kindness. You value honesty. You value empathy. You think this pain will damage those parts of you. But pain does not remove them. It simply tests them. And you are still here fighting for your heart. That shows who you really are." Keanu looked at her, and the silence between them felt meaningful, full of honesty and deep understanding. He said quietly, "I keep thinking about the moment it all went wrong. I keep replaying it in my mind. I ask myself again and again why I did not see the truth sooner, why I gave that person another chance, why I believed in them when others told me to be careful." Sandra tilted her head slightly. "Do you want to tell me exactly what happened?" Keanu hesitated, then nodded. "The person I tried to help came to me with a story that sounded real. They spoke with emotion. They showed pain. They said they needed a chance to rebuild their life. I believed them. I believed every word. I spent time trying to guide them. I tried helping them find a safe path. I tried giving them support they said they had never received before." Sandra listened closely, feeling the depth of his regret. Keanu continued, "But they used my support to do something that hurt someone else. When I found out, it felt like the ground under me broke. I felt responsible. Even though I was not the one who made the choice, I felt connected to it." Sandra took a breath and spoke with steady reassurance. "You did not do anything wrong. You gave someone a chance because you believed they could change. That is not a mistake. That is compassion." Keanu looked at the water again. "But compassion sometimes hurts the person who offers it." Sandra nodded. "Yes, it does, but it also shows the strength of the person offering it." Keanu rested his hands on his legs. His voice held a soft ache. "I was so afraid of losing the part of me that tries to see the good in people. But after this happened, I felt myself pulling back. I felt myself becoming closed. I felt myself wanting to protect my heart so strongly that I might shut myself from everyone. Sandra placed her hand gently on the step beside his. She did not touch him directly. She simply let her presence offer comfort. "It is natural to protect yourself after being hurt," she said. "Your heart is not weak, it is hurt. There is a difference. When a person gets hurt, the instinct is to close the door, but you open the door by telling me all this. That is proof that you have not lost yourself." Keanu let out a slow breath. "I want to believe that." "Believe it," she said softly. He turned his head slightly, studying her expression. "How can you be so sure?" Sandra smiled gently, a warm, honest smile. "Because I have seen you for many years. I have seen you stay gentle even when the world is difficult. I have seen you choose respect even when others choose anger. I have seen you stay humble when you could choose pride. And I have seen you continue to care even when caring hurts." Keanu felt warmth spread through his chest. Not a sudden warmth, a slow, grounding one. "But what if this pain stays with me?" he asked quietly. Sandra replied, "Then we walk through it together. You do not have to heal alone. You do not need to solve everything in one day. You only need to take one step at a time." Keanu nodded slowly. For the first time since the pain began, he allowed himself to believe that he did not need to carry everything by himself. Sandra continued, "You have helped so many people without asking anything from them. Now you need help, and you are allowed to accept it." Keanu's voice was soft. "It is hard for me to accept help." "I know," Sandra said with a small smile. "That is why I am here, to remind you that you are human too." The sun started dipping lower, coloring the sky with deeper shades of orange and gold. The moment felt quiet, fragile, and beautiful. Keanu and Sandra remained on the steps, watching the light change. Slowly, he felt something shift inside him. A tiny release. A small part of the weight lifting. He whispered, "Thank you for staying." Sandra looked at him with gentle honesty. "I will always stay when you need me." Keanu felt a deep ache in his chest, not from pain this time, but from gratitude. He turned back to the lake and said, "I think I want to face this fully, not hide from it anymore. I want to understand what it means for me, not run from the feelings." Sandra nodded. "That is courage, real courage." Keanu felt the truth of her words. Slowly, quietly, he felt a new strength forming inside him, not the strength of trying to be perfect, not the strength of carrying everything alone, but the strength that comes from honesty, vulnerability, and trust. The day slowly began to fade, and somewhere within that fading light, Keanu took another step toward finding himself again. And this time, Sandra walked beside him. Night arrived slowly around the cabin. The sky turned deep blue and the air became colder, but the quiet beauty of the lake made everything feel calm. Small waves touched the shore like gentle whispers. The moonlight spread across the water, making it shine with a soft silver glow. Keanu stepped outside again after dinner, feeling that familiar heaviness returning in small pieces. He walked toward the lake and stood still, letting the cold air touch his face. Even though he had spoken so much today, something inside him still felt trapped, something he had not yet released. Sandra joined him a moment later. She moved quietly and stood beside him without saying a word. She sensed something was shifting inside him again, something deeper and more difficult. "You are thinking again," she said softly. Keanu let out a slow breath. "I cannot stop." Sandra nodded gently. "Then let it come, do not fight it." Keanu closed his eyes. His voice was low. "I feel like there is something inside me that has been waiting to come out for years, something I have kept buried because I did not want it to change how I lived." Sandra watched him carefully. She knew this moment was important. "When you are ready, you can tell me," she said. Keanu opened his eyes slowly and looked at the water. The reflection of the moon moved with every small wave. He felt connected to that movement, as if his emotions were tied to the water's gentle rise and fall. "The truth is," he began, "I have always tried to be strong for others. I try to be steady, I try to be calm. I try to be the person people can count on. But there are times when I feel tired, truly tired, and I never say it, I never let myself feel it fully." Sandra did not interrupt. She understood the difficulty of admitting such a vulnerable truth. Keanu continued with a quiet voice. "When something goes wrong, I blame myself. When someone lies to me, I think I should have known better. When someone takes advantage of my help, I think I should have seen it. When someone gets hurt, even if it is not my fault, I feel responsible." He paused, staring at the lake as if the answer was hidden somewhere in the reflection. "I keep telling myself that I must stay strong because people expect that from me. But I never ask myself what I expect from myself. I never allow myself to feel weak or confused or tired." Sandra spoke softly. "It must be very heavy to carry that alone." Keanu nodded slowly. "It is, and I did not even realize how heavy it was until now. When the recent situation happened, it felt like all the pain from the past rose at the same time. The weight became too much, and I felt like I could not continue being the person I believed I was." Sandra stepped a little closer. "You do not have to be strong all the time." Keanu shook his head with a sad smile. "I know, but sometimes I feel like the world only sees the strong parts of me, and because they see it, I think I have to stay that way." Sandra placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "You do not owe strength to anyone, not even yourself. You are human, and humans feel pain, humans make mistakes, humans get tired." Keanu closed his eyes again as her words sank into him. Sandra continued with care, "You have a kind heart, and kind hearts break more often because they open more often. But that does not make you weak, it makes you real." Keanu's voice trembled slightly as he said, "Sometimes I wonder if I give too much." Sandra replied in a gentle whisper, "You do not give too much. The world sometimes takes too much. That is not the same." Keanu let those words settle inside him. They felt true, painfully true. After a long moment, he said quietly, "There is one moment I have never spoken about, not to anyone." Sandra listened with full presence. "I am here." Keanu looked up at the sky, as if he needed strength from somewhere beyond himself. "Years ago," he said slowly, "I trusted someone deeply. I thought they were good. I thought they needed support. I thought I could help them heal. But they hurt me in a way I did not expect. They betrayed my trust, and they made me question my own ability to see people clearly." Sandra's heart tightened at the pain in his voice. Keanu continued, "I thought I healed from that. I thought it was behind me. But when this new situation happened, everything came back. The old hurt, the old fear, the old feeling of being used. It felt like the same wound was cut open again." Sandra stepped closer and spoke softly, "You have carried this alone for a long time." Keanu nodded. "Yes, I never talked about it because I thought it made me weak. I thought people would see me differently if they knew." Sandra looked at him with complete honesty. "I see you more clearly now, not less, and what I see is someone who has survived pain with grace." Keanu's eyes softened. "Grace, I do not feel graceful." Sandra smiled gently. "Grace does not mean being perfect. Grace means standing back up even when your heart is tired." Keanu took a shaky breath. Something inside him broke open, but not in a painful way. It was like a door he had kept shut for years was finally opening. For the first time, he was letting someone see the full truth. He whispered, "I do not want to lose the part of me that believes in people." Sandra responded quietly, "You will not lose it. You just need to protect it better. Not close it, protect it." Keanu turned toward her slowly. "How do I do that?" "By learning that caring does not mean letting yourself get wounded again and again," she said. "And by remembering that your value does not depend on the choices others make." Keanu looked down at the ground, his voice almost trembling. "I feel lost, Sandra." Sandra stepped close enough for her presence to steady him. "You are not lost. You are in a place between who you were and who you are becoming, and it hurts. But it is not the end. It is the beginning of a new strength." Keanu lifted his head slowly. "You really believe that?" Sandra nodded with a soft smile. "I do, and I believe something even more important." "What is that?" he asked. "You do not have to go through this alone anymore." Those words reached the deepest part of him, the part that had stayed silent for years, the part that never asked for help, the part that always carried pain quietly. He felt something warm rise in his chest, something close to relief, something close to trust. He whispered, "Thank you for seeing me even when I do not see myself." Sandra smiled gently. "That is what friends do. They remind you of who you are when you forget." The moonlight continued to shine over the water. The night stayed calm, and for the first time in a long time, Keanu felt a small but clear truth. He was allowed to break. He was allowed to feel. And he was allowed to heal. Not alone, but with someone who understood him completely. The night slowly faded, and a soft, quiet morning arrived around the cabin. The sky turned light blue, and a thin layer of mist floated over the lake. The world felt calm in a way that touched the heart without saying a single word. Birds began to sing gently as if they knew something new was beginning. Inside the cabin, Keanu opened his eyes. He felt different, not completely healed, not suddenly strong, but lighter. It was the first time in many weeks that he woke up without a heavy weight crushing his chest. Instead, he felt a small, warm strength growing inside him, not loud, not dramatic, but steady. He sat up slowly and looked around the quiet room, letting the peaceful morning settle into him. He remembered everything he had shared with Sandra, everything she had said, everything she had helped him uncover. It all felt raw, but it also felt real. For the first time, he was not afraid to face the truth of his own heart. He stood and walked outside. The air was cool and fresh. The lake looked like a soft mirror reflecting the early sunlight. Keanu stepped closer to the water and breathed in deeply. It felt like the lake was breathing with him. A moment later, Sandra walked out of the cabin. She wrapped a light sweater around her arms and smiled softly when she saw him. "Good morning," she said gently. "Good morning," Keanu replied. She stood beside him, both of them looking at the soft ripples on the surface of the lake. The silence between them felt peaceful, almost warm. Sandra turned her head toward him. "How do you feel today?" Keanu thought for a moment. Lighter, still hurting, still confused, but lighter. Sandra nodded. "That is how healing starts." Keanu looked at the water again. "I did not think I could reach this point. I thought the pain would stay forever." "Pain stays only when we refuse to face it," Sandra said. "You faced it. That alone makes you stronger." Keanu let the words settle inside him. He did not rush. He did not hide. He simply allowed himself to feel the truth. "Can I tell you something?" he asked softly. "Of course," Sandra replied. Keanu turned to her with calm eyes. "Last night, when I talked about everything, it felt like I was finally letting go of something I had carried for too long, something that was holding me down." Sandra nodded. "Yes, you opened your heart, and when we open the heart, the heavy parts start to leave." Keanu looked at her with deep sincerity. "Thank you for staying by my side. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reminding me that I do not have to be perfect to be worthy." Sandra smiled with a warmth that felt real and honest. "You never needed to be perfect, Keanu. You only needed to be yourself." Keanu lowered his eyes gently. "That is what I forgot. I forgot who I am." Sandra spoke softly. "Then let this morning be the moment you remember." Keanu nodded slowly. "Yes, I think I can do that now." They walked together along the edge of the lake. The path was soft, and the morning sunlight filtered between the trees, creating gentle patterns on the ground. The air carried a quiet hope, and Keanu felt it touch something deep inside him. After a few steps, Sandra asked, "What do you think is the next step for you?" Keanu took a moment before answering. "I think the next step is accepting that I am allowed to make mistakes. I am allowed to trust. I am allowed to care, and I am allowed to protect myself at the same time." Sandra nodded with approval. "That sounds like growth." Keanu continued, "I also think I need to stop blaming myself for the choices others make. I cannot carry the responsibility for what people do with the kindness I offer." "That is true," Sandra said. "Kindness is a gift, but it is never a guarantee. Some people accept it, some misuse it. Their choice does not define your heart." Keanu looked at her with gentle gratitude. "That is what I needed to hear." They reached a small wooden bench near the edge of the lake. It was old but sturdy. They sat down, letting the warmth of the morning sun touch their faces. Keanu spoke again, his voice softer now. "There was a moment these past weeks where I thought I could not continue. Not in life, but in spirit. I thought I had lost the part of me that believes in people. I thought I had lost the part of me that makes me who I am." Sandra listened with complete attention. Keanu continued, "But you came. You sat with me. You listened without judging. You reminded me that pain does not erase my worth. You reminded me that I am still the same person even if I am hurt." Sandra placed her hand gently over his. "You reminded yourself. I only held the mirror." Keanu felt those words sink deeply into his heart. They were simple words, but they carried a truth he had been searching for. "You know," Sandra said softly, Sometimes people lose themselves because they walk through darkness alone. But when someone walks with them, even for a short time, they find their path again. Keanu turned to her and whispered, "You helped me find my path." Sandra smiled with kindness, "And now you can walk forward again." They both looked at the lake, watching the sunlight become brighter as the morning grew. After a long, peaceful moment, Keanu said, "I want to keep trusting. I want to keep believing in people. I want to keep being myself. But I will be careful now, not closed, just careful, not hard, just wise." Sandra nodded. That is the balance we all learn with time. Keanu felt the truth of that settle inside him like a warm stone in his chest. He added quietly, "I thought I could not continue, but now I think I can. I think I can face the world again." A soft smile appeared on Sandra's face. "That is because you remembered who you are." Keanu looked at her with deep respect. "And you reminded me." They stood up from the bench and walked slowly back toward the cabin. The world felt different now. Lighter, clearer, kinder. Keanu no longer felt like he was carrying the weight alone. He no longer felt lost. He no longer felt like his heart had been broken beyond repair. He felt human, and he felt ready to continue. As they reached the cabin door, Sandra turned to him and said, "Always remember this moment, Keanu, the moment you chose to continue, the moment you chose yourself again." Keanu nodded quietly, "I will." They looked at each other with a soft understanding that needed no words. Two friends, two souls, two hearts that respected each other. And as the warm sunlight filled the cabin behind them, Keanu finally stepped forward with the strength he thought he had lost. He remembered who he was, and he was ready to live again.